Vanina Goyle from the Office of Planning and Community Development. They'll be here with the presentations as well as able to answer your questions. So that kind of is our starting point for our meeting overview and announcements. We will spend a little bit of time giving you a chance to ask clarifying questions on some of the zoning maps, and then have some time to discuss and present the feedback that's been heard on those maps. And then we want to give all of you a chance to really let us know whether that summary of feedback is reflecting the input that you feel like the focus group members provided, as well as whether there are any key themes that are missing or things that maybe were perhaps mischaracterized. We also have time for observers to provide comments. During most of our discussion, we want to provide priority to the focus group members so that we can make sure those folks are able to provide their comments, but want to have time at the end and where is possible for observers to provide comments as well. And then at the end, we will wrap up with some next steps. Okay. We do have a couple folks who are sending in some questions. Are there any that we need to? We've got logistic questions. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on and start with the beginning of the presentation. And Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Angie. Hello, everyone. We just wanted to start with a bit of a recap on where we've been discussing the maps so far. So just to remind you that for several months, between approximately May and July, we started by developing and reviewing with you principles that would guide the mapping choices for how we would implement mandatory housing affordability. After we completed those principles in September, remember at the joint meeting that Mayor Murray was present at, we provided you with 5 example maps, and in small groups we discussed those 5 example maps, and you provided feedback on those particular maps at the time as well as the program in general. And then in October, the city posted all of the urban village maps online for comment by focus group members and others at hala.consider.it. And then shortly thereafter, we had the October focus group meeting where we did the dot exercise, and you identified the maps that you wanted to talk about or comment on, and Susan took us through a discussion. That discussion is largely what we've tried to summarize in the document that you received. So tonight, during this webinar, we're going to review that summary of input. We also just wanted to touch on, again, where we started in the process. Early on, we had a training to address race and social justice and try to keep that in the forefront of our minds. And we'd ask you to continue to try to keep that lens in the forefront. So as we discuss mandatory housing affordability and we discuss the maps, please keep in mind questions about how the choices might impact racial and social equity. So as an example, when we're looking at a map in the upper right corner there where we, you may think of a comment along the lines of, let's focus density along an arterial or have greater zoning along an arterial and add more housing there. Well, we would want to ask the questions of what the implications of that could be. For arterials sometimes have greater exposure to air quality and light and noise issues. So is there an unintended consequence? So just keeping questions like that in mind as we discuss the choices.
So the question now is whether any of you have any kind of clarifying questions on those zoning maps as you've had a chance to look at them in more detail. We're not looking for you to to sort of agree or disagree, but if there's anything about how to read the maps or things like that that you have questions that you'd like to ask, let us know. You can either raise your hand or you can type in your question. We're going to pause and let people.
Okay.
I see a question. Okay, so the question is, are the areas with diagonal crosshatching the only places where the actual zoning designation is changing?
That's a good question. No, all the areas on the maps that have a color, the reds, the oranges, the yellows, and the browns, all those are areas that are would have a change in zoning and would have the mandatory housing affordability. The areas that are crosshatched are indicating a greater degree of change, greater than just the one additional story.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, so some areas go from SF to low-rise 2 or even low-rise 3. How is this justified by the HALA principles being such a giant increase in height? So I do think that we want to talk about clarifying questions. This feels like a little bit more of a opinion question. So I think we could hold on this question until we get to a later part of the presentation. Jeff, does that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
We're gonna walk through the maps for the particular areas so we can address that at that time.
Great. Okay. Let's see if there are any other kind of clarifying questions. For Westwood Highland Park, why are the major arterial yeah, let me read this. I'm not sure, there might have been a typo. Why are the major arterial upzones have a lower M fee structure than other upzoned areas in the village zoned M1, M2?
Okay. So the M1 and the M2 are corresponding with larger increases in development capacity, and they would also have larger affordable housing requirements. So it's really just a function of what the amount of change in the zoning is proposed for that area. And we can address that too when we talk about the Westwood area.
Okay. Any other clarifying questions about the zoning maps? How to read them? Just any questions about that? Okay. Yeah, people can raise their hands. They can type it in. They can also raise their hands, and we'll unmute them. Okay. Let's move on to the next section here. This page that's on your screen should correspond with handouts that you guys all received, which has a summary of the input from the focus groups. There are a lot of pages in there. I would encourage you to take a look at them. We're going to skip really quickly through to kind of what we think is one of the meatier pages. So just bear with me for a minute while I skip quickly past the pretty pictures and the dense pages of text to this one here, so that Jeff can give you a little bit of an overview of this before we open it up for more discussion.
Yeah. So I hope you have had a chance to glance at this or take a look at it. These are some themes that we thought we heard that maybe came up as a topic in different urban villages. Themes that characterize things we heard from your focus group. So I'll just hit on a few highlights, and then maybe we can pause and ask you if you think these seem like they're about right. So we heard a lot of comments about context, that the local conditions in individual urban villages are important to pay attention to. We heard some comments about urban village boundary geographies, specifically that some areas, the urban villages are drawn very narrowly, and some of you asked the question of whether we should take a look at more urban village expansions. We heard a lot of comments about infrastructure in your focus group and others, folks emphasizing that we should make sure that investments in things like sidewalks, transportation, and wastewater happen concurrently with growth. Your focus group also talked a lot about transitions, making sure that we have a nice step down between higher and lower intensity zones. We heard a number of comments about adding even more housing in strong market areas, so places that are experiencing strong markets that can support additional development. Maybe we should add even more housing there. We heard a number of you say that we need to make sure to reach out to folks that will have a change in the zoning of their property, that we need to make sure to communicate with those people and make sure they're aware. There was a robust discussion about trying to support smaller scale buildings and smaller scale landlords. And we had a lot of discussion about South Park in particular and how the conditions there in South Park are somewhat unique and not really seen in other urban villages. And we'll talk a little bit more about South Park when we look at that map.
So what we have now is an opportunity. So we didn't necessarily want to go through each map again and stop each map and force you to talk about each one. But similar to kind of the way that you did this in October, where you put dots on and identified the areas that you wanted to talk about, we'd like to give you guys the chance to let us know what comments you have, if you have questions, if you want to, really the questions are about whether you feel like the summary of the focus group discussion has been captured appropriately, and we want to give priority to the focus group members in this round. And so if you just let us know what you want to talk about, we can click over that map and move that way. Yeah, so we're going to start with Steve. So Steve, we are unmuting you, and you can go ahead and talk.
Okay, I just saw the review urban village geographies, and I know at the meetings we've had discussion about that issue, but I've never heard the issue come up that would result in considering a review of urban village geographies for more consistency. So that's a surprise to me.
Okay, specifically the kind of the wording about consistency.
What I read that to mean is you're going to look to expand the boundaries where it's narrow. So.
Okay, and we were happy to take a look at that wording. Maybe it should just read review urban village geographies and not kind of imply that that always means an expansion.
Okay.
I might do it. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We also have a question. Well, we had a hand up, and now the hand is down.
Logistic question.
No, okay. So we've sorted that out. Any other? We're looking for people to share, comments, thoughts, both on this page as well as the maps that we have. I'll turn a page just to remind you what they look like. We have all of these maps here that folks have in their received in this packet that has comments and general feedback. So again, you can raise your hand, you can type us a question, and we'd be happy to hear your comments.
You can go to Westwood if you want.
Sure. We'll go over to Westwood here. There you go.
So there was an earlier question about Westwood. And I think it had to do with, maybe we could just read the question there.
Yeah. Okay. The earlier question about Westwood, or this?
Yeah,
this
I
one
see
here?
the question about Westwood there.
Okay. 2 of the reps for Westwood Highland Park were out of state at the last meeting, which was, and so earlier this month, in lieu of not being able to attend, they attended an OPCD community workshop specifically for Westwood Highland Park and West Seattle. And West Seattle will be conducting a community-led workshop tomorrow night. This person would like the findings and the notes from both meetings to be submitted to the city team and the city council. And they believe that Brennan led the OPCD workshop and will attend tomorrow's workshop.
There was a question about increase in height in the single-family areas.
All right, we're going to expand our questions here a little bit.
So I just want to address the comment about the other meetings and workshops, and that's right. And we're taking input on MHA in a variety of ways. There are community meetings, there are workshops, there are going to be 5 open houses, and we'll tell you about the dates for those at the end of the meeting. So multiple different ways the city's taking input, and we're considering all of it.
Okay. Another question we have here is, let's see, my questions are appearing and disappearing. A comment here about they won't be taking notes at the meeting tomorrow, but the West Seattle blog will be covering it. And we're also, there's someone who's trying to find the handout, so we're working on getting those to folks. And there's another question here that's an answer on, it's a question on Delridge. It looks like it's an answer. It says, yes, Delridge being upzone M and the RSL properties being upzoned M1, M2. Okay. Okay. Here is a question or a comment, no specific comment about the maps, but want to know if there will be a plan coming that will address making sure infrastructure improvements will match pace with the increase in density, specifically in the areas that have not had regular investment. And also if there will be a transit plan to also match pace. And when can we expect to see this?
Well, the city and others are continually making investments in transit, other infrastructure investments, and definitely want to focus those investments in areas that are growing. Being within an urban village is one of the priority areas to receive investments. So through a variety of other plans and programs, passage of Sound Transit 3, the Parks Levy and others, will continue to look at making the investments in corresponding infrastructure.
Okay. Another question is, can we meet the 6,000 target without the M1, M2 upzone?
That's a good question, and we are still working towards providing you with the metrics for exactly how many housing units this proposal would produce. So we will provide you with some numbers on that. The important thing to remember is that the proposal citywide adds up to the 6,000 units. There can be adjustments in individual areas that can modify, things within urban villages, slightly in one direction or the other, and the total citywide will still be around the 6,000 units. So there's room for modifications to the M1s and the M2s and still meeting the 6,000 target.
Other questions or comments from focus group members, whether you feel like the summary of feedback reflected your input, and if there are key themes that are missing. So here's a question about South Park. Maybe let's see if we just go to that. Oh, okay, so I got to go back. Sorry, folks. Go back because I can't do my alphabet to know that South Park would be before Westwood. Okay. Okay, so on the South Park map, what does "don't encourage a neighborhood center here" comment mean under number 3? A couple of us had pointed out constraints in that area, such as the library, fire department, and community center.
Okay, so that's a good comment, and thank you for clarifying that. From the notes that we were looking at, we construed that comment to mean, we interpreted that comment to be that along the lines of the kind of center or core of the neighborhood was over near note number 2, where at the bottom of the bridge along 14th, and at the intersection of Cloverdale and West Marginal is not, it didn't have the same characteristics to kind of become a neighborhood center or gathering place. So that's how we interpreted that comment, but we could have gotten it wrong. So we welcome your suggestion.
Okay. So let's see. I'm scrolling up on my questions here. We got a whole bunch of questions here. So hold for just a minute while we organize our list. And feel free, people can raise their hand. So okay, I'm just clearing these out here. Here's a question on, let's see if we go here, Westwood and Highland Park. Westwood Highland Park Village Park's open spaces note. The village is essentially divided by topography with a 17 to 20% grade from between the Westwood Village Center and Delridge. So I think that's just a note for you guys to have.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Okay. We'll do one more written question, and then we have a hand raised. The question is, will that estimate of new housing units model how much building is likely, or simply assume that everywhere gets built up to the maximum allowed by the new zoning?
It considers the sites that are likely to redevelop. It does not assume that everything would be developed to the maximum. It would be much less than that. So it acknowledges that only certain sites will develop over time.
Okay. Katie, we're going to unmute you so you can go ahead and speak your comment or your question.
Oh yeah, I was asking the question about South Park, and I just wanted to close the loop on that, and just let you guys know that you characterized that comment correctly, and that's what I had brought up, and some other folks in South Park had brought up in the last meeting. So just want to close the loop on that. That you have it right there. It's just neighborhood center makes it sound almost like a new community amenity coming in. So maybe just some more clarifying language around that.
Okay, we'll take a look at that language, and thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Okay. Another comment. The key thing missing is a plan to specifically address the infrastructure needs in each neighborhood in addition to this upzoning. For example, in Westwood Highland Park, there is need for street traffic improvements with current load of traffic and plan for increasing bus routes. Again, buses are already overcrowded. That's the first comment. The next one, let me scroll down here a little bit. Does the city, oh, sorry, hold on. Oh, actually, I think that's an observer comment, so we're going to hold on that one. Here's another question or a comment, and I'm going to go to the Greenwood page because it's about the Greenwood map. So let's go here. I recall people mentioning Greenwood Finney being narrow, but do not recall any comments about expanding the urban village. I'm not sure where this idea came from. Kind of a question, where that idea came from.
Okay. Thank you for that comment. Again, this was an interpretation of the discussion in the notes. And again, welcome your clarification for how you understand that comment. It may be that there wasn't a specific suggestion for a strategy for addressing the narrowness of the village. It was something that was definitely commented on. You could interpret it in a couple different ways, that the urban village needs to be expanded or larger in that area, or potentially that there needs to be even better attention to the transition standards and setbacks at that edge. So there's a couple different ways that it could be looked at, and we welcome your clarification.
I have a request to show the Morgan comments. I'm just going to put that on the screen for people to look at. They missed some of the meeting last month. Okay. Any other, again, we're looking at hands or written questions from focus group members. There are a number of folks who we haven't heard from, and I just want to make sure that you guys have the chance to raise your hand or to type in a comment. Focus group members who are, we can see that you're logged in, but we haven't heard from you, so we want to make sure that you've had the chance. I have a request here for the Madison Miller map, so I'm going to go to that one. There we go. Okay. Question from Jeffrey, or a comment from Jeffrey. It makes complete sense to expand the urban village boundaries, especially in the ridiculously narrow, that was my emphasis, sorry, in the ridiculously narrow urban villages like Finney, Greenwood.
Okay, thank you for that comment.
And just to let folks who are observers know, I think Brett has been answering each of you and letting you know that we're going to get to observer comments and questions at the end, but we just want you to know that we do see your questions on here. We just want to get through all the questions from the focus group members. Any other questions or comments from focus group members on any of the maps? And I'm happy to flip to any of these if there's one you want to look at on the screen or something that's helpful. Just raise your hand or shoot us a note and let us know. Okay, here's a question about South Park, or a comment, which is that at South Park, renters already experienced displacement, and a question about what is the next step for this neighborhood. I'm assuming that's the South Park neighborhood.
Yes, yeah. So we acknowledge that definitely displacement is occurring all over the city, even now, without any changes or without this program. One of the things about MHA is that it seeks to address displacement by making sure that when building happens that it would include some affordable housing. I know that doesn't solve all of the concerns. To the point about South Park having unique conditions, you see that under varied opinions, where I think in the September meeting as well, there were some comments kind of asking whether South Park being next to an industrial area, having a very high risk of displacement, whether it's an area that should even be considered to take a little bit more time before implementing MHA, to look at in a unique way. So we've tried to capture that under the varied opinions, and it's something that we'll document and present as an option for decision makers to consider.
Okay. Mary, we are unmuting you, and you can go ahead and talk out loud. I can hear your voice.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you? Oh, okay, good. Someone just, I didn't catch who made that comment about the narrow urban village like Greenwood Finney. Was it someone from this urban village?
It was one of the focus group members who made the comment.
Okay,
when people are typing them in, they're coming in somewhat, we're not necessarily attributing them, but it was from a focus group member.
Okay, because, well, what I wondered, but I wondered if it was somebody from our urban village, because I wanted to just say I don't get any sense from anyone in this urban village that there's any support for expanding. And so the issue, I think, is more what to do about the fact that there is this very narrow, long urban village. It's just an odd shape for an urban village. And I think it's more, Jeff, what you were saying earlier about the transitional, how to deal with the transition between the main street and then these kind of steep hills that go down on both sides because there's this narrow ridge.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. I think clearly there's a couple of different viewpoints on that topic, yeah. And we'll try to capture that accurately.
Yeah, well, partly because when you said in the comments, you said that it was generally supported that the part about consider expanding the urban village to a walk shed for a more logical urban village extent. I don't remember anybody from Greenwood Finney generally supporting that, so that's why I was concerned about that. There may be people who feel like that's really important who live in other neighborhoods, but not anybody who lives in this neighborhood.
Okay, that's really helpful.
That I heard from.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to put you back on mute now. So, okay. We also have a question about how the walk shed would work on Upper Queen Anne. So let me go to that page here. The question is, how would the walk shed work on Upper Queen Anne? Meaning, how much wider could the boundaries be?
Well, the city has not, to my knowledge, estimated a walk shed for Upper Queen Anne. I think it's a concept. Also, I'm not sure where you would kind of consider the center to draw a walk shed from, given that there's not a high-capacity transit line. There is transit on Queen Anne Avenue North, but not a particular station. So it's something that would have to be looked at, studied, and there's no proposal for an expansion at this time.
Okay. I'm going to move here to the Madison Miller, and the comment here is that the comments on the Madison Miller seem very similar to those my neighbors have made. No one I've talked to seems to mind if more housing is built here and wouldn't mind if the single-family areas become less single-family. So just a comment there.
Okay.
We do want to make sure that we have time for observer comments as well as some next steps. So I want to give one last call to focus group members if you want to raise your hand or shoot us a comment or a question, and then we will open it up to some focus group members and give those folks a couple minutes each. Okay, so what I would like, I have two comments or two questions that are in from focus group from observers, and I would like any other observers who want to ask a question or make a comment to raise their hand, just so I can get a count of how many we have. We'll give these folks, so I think we'll each get about two minutes each, and so I am going to start with one of these questions here. We'll kind of jump around to give everybody a chance. The first question is, to clarify, are you saying the focus groups found that long, skinny urban villages need to be reviewed and perhaps enlarged? Is that agreed upon, or is that not an accurate reflection of what the focus groups decided?
Well, we're not striving for consensus, and you know, we're trying to accurately capture the discussion. The topic of the narrowly drawn urban villages was definitely something that came up as a topic of discussion, so we wanted to document that. I think it's fair to say that some folks appear to have expressed the idea that there should be expansions to those urban villages. Others not necessarily didn't have that same view, and we'll capture that in the document. So yeah, it's not a consensus recommendation.
Okay. Another question or comment from an observer. I think you could increase the zoning from SF to MS, east and west of Greenwood Avenue South and north of 85th. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. We'll just put that up there. So that's a comment. And then the final comment that I have from an observer is, does the city know for each urban village individually how many, oh, sorry, I just lost it for a second. There we go. Does the city know for each urban village individually how many additional housing units the proposed rezoning will create? Why doesn't the city give each neighborhood a target for new housing units and let residents be part of neighborhood planning to meet that target?
The affordable housing is a citywide issue, and the idea behind mandatory housing affordability is that each area of the city, each urban village, contributes towards affordable housing. And so the baseline proposal, which is really what you're reviewing, is one way that each urban village and each multifamily and each commercial area could contribute towards affordable housing through this program. There's room for modifications and improvements, but the basic idea that all areas contribute to the program is one of the core principles. So I hope that helps a little.
Okay. We have one hand raised for one of our focus group members. So Cindy, we're going to unmute you and let you ask your question or make your comment.
Yeah, I have two. One is related to the question that just got asked. There's a document that's been posted on the HALA website that shows how many units will be generated by performance and how many are estimated to be produced by payment. And I swear I can't remember off the top of my head where it is, but maybe you can send that link out, because it kind of comes down to, you know, you can use that to kind of go, well, if the expected calculation is only 1,000 units will be produced by performance, on-site performance, and you divide that by 37 urban villages, that gives you about 27 units will be built in each urban village. So that might be a useful thing to send out. That was just posted this month. My second comment is back to the conversation about expanding urban village boundaries. I thought one of the groundwork discussions we had was there were a few villages where, because of the comp plan work, those were proposed to have expansions, and that was all that was going to be on the table. So when you talk about one of the villages that has not been teed up for the past year to get expansions, when you capture those dialogues, they should not be captured as though you were allowing those to be genuine proposals being made, that they're just kind of like people talking about, well, in the future, when you get around to, whatever urban village, here's a side comment, but they're not related to what we're actually looking at these maps for.
Okay, thanks for both of those comments, Cindy, and definitely on your second point, we can do a better job making it clear that the comments about potential urban village modifications other than the ones that are shown on the maps would be dealt with at a future time. And you're right, we're not proposing those to be modified for putting MHA in place in the first round.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. I'm going to put you back on mute here. Okay, so we are coming up on our time of when we need to move into the next step. So there are some folks, we just had a rash of questions, I think, beyond what folks thought they had maybe at the last minute. So we have all of these questions written down, and we'll make sure that the team sees those. And so just rest assured that none of these comments that you've typed in are lost in any way. Okay, Jeff, I want to make sure you have time to talk about next steps. We've got a couple of slides there. Let me get to those slides. Okay. Go for it.
Okay, so just to a comment earlier, there are many ways to participate. This slide is showing you some of the upcoming opportunities. So a mailer has gone out to several sectors of the city, letting them know about HALA and the upcoming 5 community meetings. You see the dates there for those 5 meetings. Those are big public meetings. All are welcome to attend, and we'll have the maps there for discussion. The maps are still also available on Consider It, so please encourage folks to comment there as well. The 9 neighborhood urban design workshops, that includes the Westwood Highland Park one that Gunnar mentioned. The next one is in Aurora, Lipton Springs tomorrow night. And then keep in mind that the EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement, will consider and review all possible environmental impacts stemming from the proposal, and the draft EIS is expected to be released around the end of February or beginning of March, and there's a formal comment period on that study at that time. So just reminding you that there's lots of different ways to weigh in.
Jeff, can you clarify the citywide mailing, who that went to? The whole city? Citywide?
Thank you, Angie. Not quite the whole city, but for all properties, all addresses, I should say, that are in an area that could have the MHA zoning changes. So any area on those maps that had a color should receive that mailer.
Great. Okay.
So just a timeline. We touched on this a little at the beginning. We're there in the orange flag at the November focus group where we're looking at the preliminary summary. After this meeting, there will be one more event, one more wrap-up, and we're still thinking about and taking comments on what that event should look like. If you have preferences, please email those to me or to us. At that time, we would like to have a comprehensive summary of the focus group input, including the principles phase, your input on the diagrams for the zoning increases, as well as the maps. And we want to package that up and have that as a draft comprehensive summary for you to take a look at. And then the EIS process that I mentioned. And finally, there won't be any changes proposed until next summer at the earliest. So all of this input that we're taking will feed into what's ultimately sent to the City Council next summer.
Jeff, can you just clarify when in this process the maps will be revised to address comments? Is there a point when people should connect in to see those revised maps?
Right. So we're going to take input on this round, this version of the maps through January, and we'll compile all the comments that we've received from the different channels, and then have a revised set of maps later that spring after the draft EIS is released.
Okay.
Draft EIS will also study versions of this map to consider varied potential impacts. So the draft EIS will also have versions of the maps as well.
Great. Okay, so the next, there are a number of different things that people have that they can put on their calendars for upcoming opportunities for community input. We want to make sure that you guys know that this presentation has been, we've had this webinar recorded, as well as the other webinars for each of the other focus groups. So those will be available online, as well as the presentation and a summary of the discussion. So all those things are available online, as well as the materials for the other focus groups if you're tracking multiple focus groups. So we have all that available for you. And again, there were some folks kind of at the end who typed in some comments, and so we are certainly adding those to the list of comments that we have received, so we can make sure to capture those as well. Jeff, any other comments? As we're coming up to our
I just did. I see the written comments coming in, and just want to make sure you know that we're taking those into account, and we'll try to get back to you with responses to the comments and questions that we weren't able to get to. We just have a couple minutes left.
Yeah. We want to be respectful of folks' time. We know it's your evening and you maybe have other things that you want to do rather than be here tonight. I don't know what that could possibly be, but we have these all written down and we'll make sure to get those to folks. Any other last comments, Jeff?
Not from me, no.
Okay. Well, that was great. Thanks, everyone, for your time. I think we'll close with that, and appreciate you spending the hour with us and all of your great comments. Thank you all so much.